Sox in the basement.
The $1,000 guest bounty, something that we do here on Sox in the Basement, is going on right now. The first guest may be appearing within the next week or so. I don't want to give out who it is because it is not completely secured. And it's also a name where I feel like somebody within the organization would make a phone call and try to mess this up on me. Because they don't particularly like us right now over at 35th and Shields Head. So I'm keeping this one close to the vest. But if the first one is a name like this, it's going to be one hell of an off season on Sox in the Basement. So make sure you are subscribed either to the YouTube channel or on any podcast player. Get all of your options and find us at soxinthebasement.com. You can also go to soxinthebasement.com and start the conversation with us. Who do you know out there that would be a great guest for this show? And it doesn't have to be baseball or White Sox related. It is the off season. Who would be interesting? And I always point out to people, Liam Hendricks and Jake Berger were on a couple years ago when we were doing this. And David Sampson, a retired front office guy who never touched the White Sox, but had a good story about Jerry Reinsdorf, won. And the person that put him up got the $1,000 guest bounty. Brought to you by Cork and Carry at the Park at 33rd and Princeton with the award-winning burgers and the ballpark favorites. It's your pregame, it's your in-game, it's your post-game place over at the ballpark, whether you're going in or not. Get over there for the indoor-outdoor seating throughout the season. And in the off-season, it's still a great neighborhood bar. And they also have the original Cork and Carry over on Western Avenue. What is that, around 106th and Western? Get out there as well during the off-season. So the $1,000 guest bounty going on. The first guest I'm excited about. All I can tell you is, and Ed will tell you this. My first thing I said to him today, I have to call this guy today, and I'm nervous. Didn't I tell you that?
Yeah, you did. You're actually nervous about.
I'm nervous.
You don't get nervous about guests usually.
No, but I'm nervous about this one. I hope he likes me. I hope he's excited about coming on. He's expressed that he's excited about coming on the show. I hope he likes me. It's like I have to prepare myself before I do this, and this is somebody who I greatly respect, who I'm excited. This is somebody who was on my top 10 people I would love to have on this show.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a dream come true.
Yeah, it's not really
in that regard.
But it's not really my choice who wins the grand. It's going to be the listeners who determine it. So I might be really excited about this guest. Somebody else may blow this guest out of the water over the next several months of the offseason. And we don't even know if this is secured yet. But I'm excited about how we're getting going here in October. Before we dive in, though, to the arbitration numbers, postseason baseball, which has been fun, although as we're sitting here right now, 2 of the 3 series already 2-0 in a 5-game series to get to the ALCS and the NLCS. I would like to see some life out of some of these teams. Let's have a series out there. So I mean, it's almost like predetermined, right? Like teams are running in the buzzsaws as they're getting into this round of the postseason. It was kind of like that in the wild card round as well. The upper tier teams are proving to be strong in this round. So I want to get into that, talk about some interesting things we learned from Scott Merkin when he was on this show on the last episode. If you missed it, get it in any podcast player, go anywhere or go to soxinthebasement.com. You can listen to the entire Merk interview, but I want to talk about that. Before I do anything though, Ed, I have a story for you.
Good. I like story time.
Okay. And this story is Saturday when I met a fan. And every once in a while, I'll meet a listener. I'll meet a fan. I'll meet somebody who watches the show or listens to the show. Generally, it's listens to the show. We're more of an audio type podcast. We've been dabbling in the video, but it's normally somebody who listens.
Yeah, but have you seen us? Hello.
And it's always because of my voice. So I get up on Saturday morning late because I had a Southside adventure the night before, my friend. I had one of those nights where like the boys all had stuff going on. The little guy was at his mom's for the weekend. The older guy who's with me all the time was like, I'm going to my friends and staying over because we're doing some things. And I'm like, cool. The oldest is off in college. And suddenly at 8:00 at night, I was like, I'm alone on a Friday. I'm going out. So I got a little dressed up, headed out, stopped over at a bourbon bar in Evergreen Park that I enjoy. And within about 45 minutes, bumped into a lovely young lady who I have met before, who after another 45 minutes of conversation convinced me to go karaokeing around the dive bars on the south
Oh,
side.
no.
Yes. And I didn't karaoke. I just watched the train wrecks. That's what I do.
I've heard you saying you're
I'm not going to karaoke.
No.
Like, that's not me. But I will go and I will watch it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, I got invited out to karaoke. I had nothing else to do. I'm like, yeah, I'll go to karaoke with you. And I bounced around, did karaoke. So I got to bed really, really late on Friday night. Okay. Like maybe 3 a.m. It's probably when my eyes close for the evening. And so I get up later morning to a text message from my 17-year-old like, hey, Dad, can you come pick me up? And I'm like, great. I throw on a pair of blue jeans and just a t-shirt and walk out the door because I don't plan on seeing anybody. Now, one of these dive bars I was in, and these exist on the south side, they were smoking. They don't care about the law. Like, right? Like, you walk into some places.
Who cares?
Everybody's got a cigarette lit and you smell like smoke, like back in the 90s, right? I was having one of those nights. I was having one of those 22-year-old nights at 48 years old. So I smelled like it. So on the way back to the place, he goes, hey, can we get some coffee, Dad? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I stop off at this coffee shop where you have to walk into that's around 103rd and Cicero in Oak Lawn. And I'm standing there. They do like sourdough bread loaves and they do coffee and some sandwiches. And we make our coffee order and we're standing there swapping war stories, what he did last night, what I did last night, right? Me and the teenager. And in comes this guy with his teenage daughter and he's just staring at me, right? And I'm thinking it's like some guy from the neighborhood or somebody I ticked off last night while I was bouncing around. Because who knows what I got into. It was one of those nights.
Yeah, you don't have an active memory of everything.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Did I see you? Did I see you 10 hours ago? And what did I say to you? Like, that's the first thought I have in my mind. And I'm standing there and I reek. Let's not forget. I smell of cigarettes.
You smell bad.
I smell of cigarettes even though I don't smoke in bourbon breath. Because I didn't even brush the teeth when I jumped in the car. So I'm not in the state to meet anybody. And I'm talking with Dominic, and all of a sudden this guy...
Your poor son has got to be embarrassed by just the odor.
He's not embarrassed. He's used to this. So this guy turns around all of a sudden and introduces himself because he's waiting to see what I say my name is. And when I say it, he's like, Sox in the basement. Turns out, listens all the time. Shout out to Eddie, who is a K-9 officer with CPD up at O'Hare.
Oh,
all right?
Nice.
And which, again, adds to the embarrassment because there's no way a cop did not smell what was coming off of me while we were meeting.
Right.
He's all excited. He met the guy from Sox in the basement. I smell like a party. That's going wrong.
That's when you hand the keys and go, Dom, just in case, drive home. Right. Okay.
I didn't even think of it until I walked out. Like the first thing I did when I walked out is I just started giggling. I'm like, man, that was not the way to meet a listener. Now, I've always liked it when I meet people. Like, I'm one of those people, I enjoy it, Ed. Right? Not everybody likes it. Right? There's some people around the White Sox get very uncomfortable. Chuck Garfien got very uncomfortable the first time that I ever met him. Like, he looked like he wanted to jump off the escalator and run away from me. Okay. Gene Honda kind of recoils. Some guy, Jason Benetti, very, very personable when you would meet him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He was, you know, there are a lot of people, but some people, man, they get nervous. Maybe they had a bad experience. Me, I love it. So if you ever recognize the voice or for some reason you watch the YouTube video and you're like, that's the weirdo that does Sox in the basement from his basement, always say hello. But I loved it. It was great. The only thing is,
and I'll vouch for Chris. 95% of the time he smells fine.
Yeah, but I guarantee this guy got in the car and was like, wow, that guy's a train wreck. They always get you at your worst, Ed. They always get you at your worst. Somebody who is...
The good news is I don't have a best. So if you ever meet me,
he is what he is, folks. He's just Ed. Somebody who's getting their best out of someone, or actually a team that's getting the best out of someone, the Brewers getting the best out of Andrew Vaughn. And I've seen a lot of hand-wringing about the idea that we got rid of Andrew Vaughn and look what he's been doing since he left. And look at what he's done in the postseason so far. And did we make the right decision? And I'm here to tell you, you did make the right decision. You made the right decision over a guy that was nearly a -2 wins below replacement at the time that you moved on from him, hitting 189. And for his career at that time was a below, I mean, he wasn't even a 0 wins above replacement. I want to see he was like a negative something. He was like negative half a win for his career. Like at the time that they moved on from him.
Just under replacement for his entire career up to this point. like you said, when he goes down to Charlotte, not necessarily when he's traded, but when he goes down to Charlotte, he's hitting 189. He had 43 strikeouts over 7 walks. 7 walks in 48 games. This guy was lost at the plate. And it's not like he went down to Charlotte and did, an amazing job.
He didn't do
or
well
anything
there
along those
either.
lines. Yeah, no, he wasn't good for the White Sox this year, and you needed to move on. If nothing else, Andrew Vaughn needed to move on. He needed to find a lineup that he fit better in, or an organization that he fit better in, or, you had an interesting theory about Andrew Vaughn's mindset when he leaves the White Sox.
Oh no, I might not be doing this for very much longer. Maybe fear that he's finally off the team. I mean, I've heard that one floated as well by other people, and that might be the case too. He also could just be on one of his heaters because he gets hot. Like if you look at his time with Milwaukee, overall, it's very positive. But there were streaks, and then there were dips, there were peaks, and there were valleys. I want to see a whole season next year. But here's the thing: even if Andrew Vaughn becomes a really good ball player, or at least a guy who's above replacement level, if he becomes a positive for another team, it shouldn't bother you. Honest to goodness. It's the same as if you run into an ex, right? Let's say you were with somebody for a long time and they were a slob and they sat around the couch all the time and ate Cheetos, and they never took care of themselves, and they were really mean, and they were just an awful human being to be around. It was good at the beginning, but then it was really bad. And you were like, you know what? We need to break up. And you run into that person like a year later, and they've hit the gym. They've put their life back together. They're posting thirst traps on Instagram, and they're feeling good about themselves, right? Like whoever that is, you don't want that one back. Deep down underneath, they're kind of a train wreck. And even if they've gotten their stuff together, they were never going to get it together with you. Andrew Vaughn is an ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend. That's the only way you can look at Andrew Vaughn. That was somebody who was never going to work with you, but it worked with someone else. Good for them. It was never going to work with you, and you were going to waste all your time and be miserable with that person. And that's how the White Sox have to look at Andrew Vaughn. That's how I look at Andrew Vaughn. That's the exact way that you should look at the entire Andrew Vaughn situation. Meanwhile, switch to a new age of life with Hyatt Home medical equipment. Keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living and make it so they can get around on their own and live independently. Hyatt has stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, and even bathroom remodeling. They work with your insurance and have 0% financing for qualified individuals. And they have so many options when it comes to CPAP machines. They are always getting the latest and greatest technology. They have testing rooms. If you're unhappy with your vendor, switch now and get supplies directly mailed to you as well. Learn about everything Hyatt Home Medical Equipment has to offer at hhme.com. Move on from Andrew Vaughn. It was never working with you. If it works out with somebody else, good for them.
Well, and it's a byproduct. When we're talking about what's different between the current rebuild and the past rebuilds under Hahn and Kenny, one of the things that we've noted over and over and over again is that nobody has come up under Chris Getz where they have been said to be a superstar. Colson Montgomery drew Corey Seager comparisons around the league when he was in the minors initially and when he was drafted. That did not come from Chris Getz, who said, we found a Hall of Fame shortstop. When Andrew Vaughn came up, he was the savior of a lineup that desperately needed help. Okay, in 2021, remember that, coming off of the pandemic season where Vaughn hadn't played baseball because there was no minor league season. He was tabbed as a guy that was going to help stabilize the lineup and bring him into the playoffs, and he struggled. And then he did well in the postseason, actually. That's the funny part is that he was 2 for 5 in the postseason against the Astros, and he's doing well in the postseason now. But move on. You're right. You have to move on, and don't worry about the fact that Aaron Savali didn't pan out, because a guy hitting 189 who had barely walked in 45 games and was a complete and total negative in every aspect of his game was never going to net you a single useful player. The fact that you got some starts out of Aaron Savali, good job, Chris Getz.
Yeah,
really.
Don't get yourself hung up on the Vaughn thing. Move on to more important things. I want to talk a little bit about the Scott Merkin interview, because you just brought up Kenny and Rick and the past front office regime. And there was something that stuck out when I was talking to Merk on the last episode. And again, you can go back and get that on demand anytime that you want to listen to it if you missed it. It was the one right before this one. He Like whenever I do the interviews with Scott Merkin, I mean, we're talking about a guy for decades who has been covering the White Sox. We're talking about a guy who there's no way he hasn't come up with some personal relationships with people inside of the building. And he finds people that he really enjoys being around. And every once in a while, I mean, he always defends Rick Hahn. Like he loves Rick Hahn. They both went to Michigan and that's his guy, right? Like it's hard to get Merck to say that he doesn't like Rick Hahn. So I kind of stay away from the Rick Hahn stuff with him when I'm talking to him, right? But what happens when you're talking to Merck, and this is why I love him coming on the show, in the process of him answering a question that I ask him, he'll kind of give away just a little bit about something I didn't know about or I didn't fully understand. In that interview, he points out that Chris Getz and the rest of the front office, they are waiting on the budget number, and then they plan to have meetings to form the plan for the offseason. Now, we have debated on this show for years, how does this really work? We have asked the question, does Jerry tell them just kind of go out and do this? And then if you really need a player, come see me. Does he get really involved in everything that's going on? And it always seemed that Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn would say, well, I'll go to Jerry and I'll ask for something. But here's the thing. The way that was presented, and I believe that to be what's going on, because it wasn't like that was just him describing what's happening. I was asking, what's their plan in the offseason? And he goes, well, they got to get their budget number from above as to what they can spend, and then they got to have meetings, and they haven't gotten to that point yet. So that means that initially, Jerry Reinsdorf sits there and says, this is your budget. Work within your budget. The last regime never seemed to understand that this guy that they loved who owned the team, which I feel at some points was misplaced love towards their owner, they believed that if they went to him, he would give them more than what he had initially told them was the budget. And sometimes maybe he did. Maybe every once in a while he did. And they got used to that. Whereas that's where you get the Manny Machado fiasco, right? Where Kenny's out there crying in his sunglasses talking about how they gave the best offer when it really wasn't the best offer because the guaranteed money was really different in that offer. And that's why they didn't get him. They never go out and get Bryce Harper. There's all these problems that happen. There's money that didn't work out right. But now when I hear that, I say, so you get a budget and you decide I'm going to invest all that money in my bullpen a few years ago and not address the other needs that were on the team? You're not surprised when the money runs out. You know when the money's running out. And we've said it before. I think Chris Getz understands who his owner is. His past comments in the press since he's gotten in there indicate that he seems to understand who his owner is. The fact that he's redone the international scouting department and they're building new facilities and they're changing the way that they do business and they're laying down a better base and they've changed who does what in the front office and they're bringing in specialists like Ryan Fuller for hitting and Brian Bannister for pitching and they're going about a different way when it comes to building this base. I think he really understands who his owner is and that his owner has a limit financially. So now I think it's really obvious. They're going to sit there and wait and find out what Jerry tells them they can spend. Then they have to make a plan. I actually, even though it's upsetting to me to have a team that's in a major market that doesn't spend money because the owner is cheap, hearing that, I was like, well, at least there's some logic here. At least now the front office waits and finds out how much money do we have to play with and then sits down and comes up with a plan. I don't know if I felt that way with the last front office.
Well, it's the Melky Cabrera effect. Do you remember before the 2015 season, the White Sox were seemingly set, and then Melky Cabrera signs late. And that was Rick or Kenny or both of them going on and saying, look, we felt so good about our team this year that we went to Jerry and were authorized to get Melky Cabrera money, okay, to shore up the one weakness that they thought they had in the outfield. When you have that, if that was the way that they operated, where they said, okay, here's the budget, but we always feel like we can get a little bit more, well, it's going to leave you to spend foolishly, right? Because what you're going to do is you're going to sit there and say, I'm not going to budget very well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spend, and then I'm going to worry about, going out and finishing off the project by, in layman's terms, the way you and I would operate, by putting it on a credit card we got no business using anymore.
Right.
Or by going and taking out a loan or going and begging somebody for help. What if Getz sticks to the budget, then you're right. It can be lamented if Jerry doesn't want to spend money in a major market. However, at least then logically, and I think logically, this is probably what happens at the majority of teams where there is a budget to work within, and this is what you can go out and do. And I'm sure ownership does that pretty much across the league to varying results. I mean, you might have somebody like Bob Nutting in Pittsburgh who sits there and goes, root around in the cup holder of my car. There's some change, and see what you can do there.
Hey, listen, you could pick on Bob Nutting, but he had a payroll $6 million higher than Jerry Reinsdorf this year.
Well, isn't that a bit of the problem, though?
Yeah.
And so yeah, if Getz is given a payroll budget and knows what he can do and sticks within it, then what you're looking for out of the offseason is not necessarily a grand improvement, but you're looking to see, when we walk into 2025, do we have more answers than questions at this stage of where they are? Because obviously there's a lot of things that can go wrong when you have, in terms of youth, your roster is the 5th youngest in the league by 0.4 of a year, over the Colorado Rockies, who had the youngest average age at 26. So there's a lot of things that can go right or wrong with the kids, with all these rookies, all these young players that have come up. But, you can watch Chris Getz now and sit there and go, okay, as he's filling out the rotation in the bullpen, which is probably an area he's going to have to spend money, how is he doing that? If he does give Mike Tauchman arbitration, or if they re-sign Tauchman and don't let him go, how much money is there? What happens with Luis Robert Jr.'s option?
Sox in the Basement listeners trying to make the most of your money, give a call to Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor. Located on the corner of 111th and Kedzie, but serving the Chicagoland area, Tom has a get-to-know-you approach and a do-the-right-thing attitude. He's been doing this for decades. It's all about knowing your options when you're investing and planning for your retirement. No matter what stage you are at, it costs nothing to check in with Tom. Give Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor, a call today, 773-779-0023. Edward Jones, member SIPC. Well, here, let's do some quick math. You got a pen and paper in front of you? I'll have you keep track of this as I go through this. Let's do some quick math here. Let's kind of figure this out. All right. According to Spot Track, they spent $78.8 million last year. And the funniest thing about that is they only spent $17.5 million on guys who were active on the 26-man roster. They spent $41.8 million on guys who were injured.
Which is insane.
That would drive me. I don't need to be Jerry Reinsdorf to have that drive me nuts. That would drive anybody nuts. That would drive any businessman nuts. That would be insane. Okay, but so $78.8 million. That is
that's also bad luck.
Second lowest payroll according to Spot Track in all of baseball. So that's where they were at last year. Now let's look at what they have right now committed. They have $20.6 million currently committed. That's if they buy out Luis Robert Jr. and Martin Perez. But let's say they don't buy out Luis Robert Jr., add $18 million to that, Ed. And we'll just have fun with the idea that we'll add the Martin Perez because you're either going to give him the other $8.5 million, so add another $8.5 million, or you're going to pay another pitcher $8.5 million. But you're going to have to fill that role with a veteran pitcher that's going to slot in about, the 2 or 3 spot here for the beginning of next year. All right? So there you go. Those are there. Now you have the arbitration cost. Mike Tauchman is estimated at $3.4 million. I think they give it to him. What do you think? Right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think you're going to find a better player at that price.
Okay. And then Steven Wilson, do you give him $1.5 million?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a useful part of the bullpen.
Add those 2 guys back in there. All right. So now that's what I've got at this point. And then Baseball Reference believes that the remaining players that are all pre-arbitration will amount to $16.6 million. Because you got to pay all these guys that are pre-arb like, $800,000 each or something. I mean, like that's where it all adds up. You got a lot of guys making far less than $1 million, but that's your whole roster. If you think about it that way, like you have the majority of your 26-man roster for $16 million. What are we at right now?
Well, let's see here. Right now, we would be at, carry that.
It was $78.8 million for last year. The lawyer over here, not good at math. This is taking a while, man.
This is not what I went to school for. You understand that, right?
Right now, there's people yelling at their screens. Like, how do you not have this? What do you have? Ballpark it for me. Where are you at?
Not at 78.
Okay, where are you?
Well, I should have done this on a calculator.
Really? Oh my God, you're killing me.
You said pen and paper.
You're brutal. I'm going to do this myself right now, okay? I got $20.6 million. I'm adding about another $30 million. I'm adding $16.68 million. I'm at $67 million. Oh, and I got to add in Talkman and the other guy. So what is that? 3.5 plus 1.5. So that's plus 5 more. So I'm at 70. I'm at 72 million.
70. Yeah.
70 million. You came up at 70. Okay. I was doing that new math they teach the kids with rounding things. So I was trying to catch up and get the show moving here. So around $70 million. So in reality, if you decide to do all the things that you bring back everybody, it's not a massive reduction in what you've already spent. So you need a little bit more from Jerry, and you need to clear a little bit of room. And that's where I think the idea of, and that's what they're going to have to discuss. The Martin Perez thing. Okay, we're like, that's a good value. They may sit there and say, we'd rather add a couple of bats and tweak things that are in the lineup, and then we're going to have to go with young pitchers again and have a bunch of 4 and 5s out there. I think that's a terrible idea. They've expressed, and Merck brought this up, that they've expressed the idea of adding to their bullpen. So they got to find money for that. I think you have to move Luis Robert Jr. If you're going to pick up the option, which you basically said you're doing by not moving him, now you have to trade him if you're going to make real changes to the lineup. Unless the owner is going to say, I don't know, what gets him into the 25th out of 30 teams would be $100 million. The Rays were at 26 this past year, spending $87 million. If he could just get to if he could just add $10 million in payroll, he could still be in the bottom 5 teams in baseball. Cheap Jerry. And they would have a little bit of wiggle room. But that's what they have to do. That's why they need the number. That's why Merck's like, well, they need a number before they can figure out what they want to do, because they want to add to the bullpen. They clearly need to add a bat or so. They're going to have to add some pitching because the pitching's not there yet, and they want to do better this year than they did last year. So there's some things that Getz is going to be able to do and some things he may not be able to do if the owner is stingy at the same rate that he was this year.
Well, and the other thing too is if you're going to be at the bottom, you got to show some signs of life, right? Because the 25th highest payroll was the Guardians, who ended up in the playoffs, and they were at the 100 million mark. They were the first team. They were the last team on the 100 million level.
Just over $100 million for the Guardians at the 25th spot out of 30 in terms of payroll.
And then it drops down to the Rays, who were 77 and 85. Pittsburgh was 71 and 91. The Athletics, 76 and 86. And Miami, who comes in dead last in payroll this year, is 79 and 83. So they're almost 500.
And here's the thing. When you look at Major League Baseball payrolls, just to give you a perspective here, the Dodgers spent $350 million this year. The Mets spent $342 million and missed the playoffs.
Right.
The Yankees spent $300 million. The Phillies spent $290. The Blue Jays spent $255. You're not going to get that out of Jerry Reinsdorf. You're just not going to get it. On the other hand, the Milwaukee Brewers were 22nd in payroll with $120 million, made the postseason. I think are going to end up beating the Cubs and moving on to the NLCS. The Cincinnati Reds, they got eliminated very quickly, but they did make the postseason at $119 million payroll. And the Guardians at $100 million payroll made the postseason, got eliminated in the first round, but made the postseason. They were 25th overall. So the 22nd, 23rd, and 25th overall payrolls that are only sitting, I mean, the one that's closest to you is less than $25 million away. Okay, they're all sitting close to you. Those teams all made the postseason. So I think you also have a Chris Getz that has to sit down with his owner and say, look, we've got a nice young core here. Look at these teams that aren't that much ahead of us. And this is what I could do if the number you give me is in this range.
Right. And that's what we're talking about is we don't need superstars. You don't need the offseason that Rick and Kenny gave us when they went out and finally spent the money, and we ended up with Dallas Keuchel self-proclaiming himself as the best pitcher in baseball, even though he by far was not anymore, and was years removed from his Cy Young days. You don't need a last-second Melky Cabrera necessarily. You don't necessarily need to go out and get big names. What you need competent players all the way around. And when you're talking about some of those teams that were towards the bottom and made changes and upgrades, the Reds, good, solid, homegrown rotation, added a guy like Nick Martinez, who's a pretty useful pitcher, been a guy out of the bullpen, been a fifth starter, and just had a veteran presence. That was one of their big offseason moves last year. That and trading for Gavin Lux, who was basically another version of Miguel Vargas. And then beyond that, it was just see what their young guys could do and move on from guys if they needed to, and try and piece it together. And they had a good manager in Tito to get it done. So could you be the Reds next year? Yeah, why not? Yeah,
and look, it's okay to talk about this for 26, Ed, right? Like
right.
We're just looking to be competitive and build on 25 and be like what are the Bears this year? The Bears are a team that essentially they're not going to go to the Super Bowl, but they want to win more than they lose, or at least move into another level because they're building a program there. That's what the White Sox have to be doing here, because look, you're not going to win the World Series or even make it to a championship series until you really increase this payroll. Because if everything holds up the way it's going right now in the postseason, the number 1 overall payroll, the number 4 overall payroll, the number 5 overall payroll, and either the 15th or 17th overall payroll will make it into the Final Four. And the lowest of all those payrolls is $157 million.
And that's Detroit.
Yes, so there's a lot more that he's going to have to spend eventually if you really want to win a championship. But for 26 to be competitive, it's not that much of a leap. It all depends on whether or not Getz can convince him.
Yeah, and it depends on how well Getz can spend the money and how well can he budget without being tempted to or planning to have to go back and open, with an open hand and say, Jerry, I need more. Please, sir, may I have another?
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.